Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. We love to take something familiar and really explore all the fascinating details and nuance.
Oh, yeah.
And today, it's all about Celtic salt.
Ah.
I mean, we've all seen it, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the grocery store
Yeah.
with that sort of premium price tag,
Mm-hmm.
and you see the claims about all these health benefits, and you think, is it really that much better?
Right.
So let's find out. Is it worth the hype, or is it just, fancy salt?
Yeah, just a fancy name.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting about Celtic salt is that it's not just a seasoning. It's really a totally different approach to
Okay.
how salt is actually produced.
I like that.
And it really prioritizes this kind of minimal processing and this connection to natural elements, which is really cool.
Well, let's start with the basics. Where does Celtic salt come from? I was reading it's harvested in Brittany, France,
Yeah.
but not in the way we typically think of, like industrial salt production.
You got it. So instead of these large-scale kind of industrial evaporation setups, they use this traditional method in France that's been around for centuries.
Wow.
So imagine shallow clay ponds. They're filled with seawater, and the sun and the wind just slowly evaporate the water.
Okay.
And it leaves behind these delicate salt crystals.
Mm.
And then skilled artisans, they actually hand harvest the salt using these wooden tools.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's really cool. So this process really minimizes the processing that it goes through and helps preserve all that natural mineral content.
So it's a huge contrast from, the refined table salt that I think most of us are probably used to.
Totally.
Yeah. And speaking of minerals, you mentioned that, that's a big part of why Celtic salt is so special.
Yeah.
So how does the mineral content compare? Like, how much are we talking about?
It's a huge difference. Like, refined table salt is pretty much just sodium chloride.
Oh, yeah.
But Celtic salt can have up to 84 trace minerals. Yeah, so we're talking about magnesium, potassium, calcium, iron, zinc. It's like this whole spectrum of minerals that are usually just stripped away in the refining process of regular salt.
Yeah, it's like taking all the good stuff out.
Exactly.
So what does this mean for our health? We have this source here from Barbara O'Neill. She's a health educator, and she really argues that those trace minerals, they are vital for a ton of bodily functions.
Yeah, she's a big proponent of Celtic salt.
Yeah, so what are some of the specific benefits that she talks about?
Well, one of the biggest ones is improved hydration. Celtic salt is supposed to help your body actually hold on to water better.
At a cellular level.
At a cellular level, yeah. So think of it like you're getting more out of every sip of water because those minerals are helping with absorption.
So it's not just about how much you drink.
Exactly.
It's about how your body is actually utilizing it.
Precisely.
Okay.
And then another big thing is electrolyte balance. And those trace minerals, especially magnesium and potassium, those are essential electrolytes. So they play a huge role in things like nerve function, muscle contractions, even regulating your heartbeat.
I always think of electrolytes when I think about, like, sports drinks.
Yeah, for sure.
I never really considered them in terms of, like, what kind of salt I'm using.
It's a connection that a lot of people miss, and it's not just athletes.
Yeah.
Electrolytes are essential for everybody.
So Celtic salt could be a more natural way to replenish those electrolytes than, say, a processed sports drink.
Exactly. That's the idea. And there are even some claims that Celtic salt is alkalizing and detoxifying.
Okay. Before we go any further, what exactly does that mean? Like, what does it mean for something to be alkalizing?
So basically, our bodies have a natural pH balance, which
Yeah.
is essentially how acidic or alkaline something is.
Okay.
And certain foods can shift that balance. So proponents of Celtic salt say that it can kind of nudge the body toward a slightly more alkaline state,
Okay.
which is supposed to be beneficial for your overall health.
So we're not talking about turning our bodies into a giant bottle of antacid or anything.
No, not at all.
It's more about just subtly influencing this balance.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when we say detoxifying, are we talking about, like, those juice cleanses and things?
No, not quite. When we talk about detoxifying with Celtic salt, we're talking about your body's natural processes of getting rid of waste and toxins.
Right. Our bodies do that all the time.
Exactly. It's happening all the time. And the idea is that Celtic salt, with all those trace minerals and the way it might affect hydration, it could actually support those processes.
Okay. So if your cells are more hydrated,
Yeah.
does that mean they're better at flushing out waste?
That's the general idea. But of course, we need to look at this with a critical eye and to consider the scientific evidence too.
Right. Of course. We'll get to that. But before we do, I am fascinated by this whole range of minerals in Celtic salt. It's like a nutritional powerhouse.
Yep.
So let's break down some of the key players here. What's in it And why does it matter?
Okay, so let's start with magnesium. This stuff is a true multitasker in your body. It's involved in over 300 enzymatic processes. It's crucial for energy production, muscle function, and it can even help fight inflammation. And Celtic salt is a good natural source of this.
Wow, so it's like a natural multivitamin built into your salt.
Right. It's pretty amazing.
That's incredible.
And then there's potassium. We can't forget potassium. It's essential for heart health, regulating blood pressure, and preventing muscle cramps.
Yeah, my doctor's always telling me to eat more bananas for potassium.
Well, Celtic Salt's got you covered there, too. It's another great source of it.
Wow, so we've got magnesium for energy and inflammation, potassium for heart health and muscles. What other superstars are in there?
Well, we've also got calcium for strong bones and teeth. We've got sodium, of course, for fluid balance and nerve function. There's iron for oxygen transport, zinc for a healthy immune system, and manganese, which is a powerful antioxidant.
It's like the all-star team of minerals.
I know, right? It's pretty impressive. And they all work together to keep your body running smoothly.
It really does deliver on that whole spectrum of minerals.
Okay, but now I think it's time to address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
What does the science actually say about all these claims? Are we talking about proven facts, or is this just wishful thinking?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? We have to acknowledge that the research on Celtic salt specifically is still pretty limited. It's an area that definitely needs more study.
Okay, so are we saying it's all hype?
Not necessarily. You know, we need more direct research on Celtic salt, but there is some evidence to support at least some of these claims. For example, there's tons of research showing that getting enough of these trace minerals like magnesium and potassium is definitely linked to better health.
Okay, so even if the research on Celtic salt itself is still developing,
Yeah,
the science backs up the importance of those minerals.
exactly.
Okay.
And there's another interesting angle here. So some research has actually suggested that the minerals in natural, unrefined salts like Celtic salt are easier for your body to absorb than the minerals that are in processed salt. Oh, wow. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it's all about bioavailability.
Bioavailability. What's that?
Basically, bioavailability is how well your body can actually absorb and use a nutrient. It's not just about how much of something you consume, it's about how much of it your body can actually access and put to work.
Okay, that makes sense. So even if a food has a ton of a certain mineral, it doesn't necessarily mean our bodies can absorb all of it.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting with Celtic salt. Remember, we were talking about the traditional harvesting process, minimal processing.
Yeah, the clay ponds and the hand harvest.
Right, all that. Well, that really gentle approach is thought to preserve the natural structure of the salt crystals, and that includes the minerals inside them.
Oh, I see.
So the theory is that the minerals in Celtic salt are in a form that's easier for our bodies to recognize and absorb.
So it's like our bodies are saying, hey, I know what this is.
Yeah.
This is how minerals are supposed to look.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whereas, you know, refined salt that's been stripped of all its minerals and has additives and things, our bodies might not recognize it as easily.
Yeah, it's like it's foreign to them.
Wow, that's fascinating. So if the way salt is processed impacts bioavailability, I mean, does that mean that even something as basic as salt could be impacting our health in ways we don't even realize?
That is a great question, and one that we will definitely be exploring further in a part 2 of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive on Celtic salt. It's pretty wild to think that something as simple as the way salt is processed could impact how our bodies use those minerals.
Yeah, bioavailability is a fascinating concept.
So we were just talking about how those minerals from unrefined salts like Celtic salt, they might be easier for our bodies to absorb compared to, you know, processed stuff. What kind of research is out there on this?
Well, while there isn't a ton of research specifically on Celtic salt and bioavailability, there are studies that have looked at the broader picture of, unrefined versus refined salts. So, for example, there was this study published in the Journal of Food Composition and Analysis,
Okay.
and it found that the minerals in Himalayan pink salt, which is another unrefined salt, were more bioavailable than those in table salt.
So this isn't just like an idea.
Right.
There's actual evidence to suggest that unrefined salts might have a real advantage.
Exactly, yeah. And then this brings us to another pretty interesting observation. There are some populations around the world that mostly use unrefined salts,
Okay.
like Himalayan or Celtic salt.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually have lower rates of hypertension, which is high blood pressure.
Compared to people who use mostly processed table salt.
Right, exactly.
That's fascinating. It makes you wonder if there's a connection there.
It really does. Now, of course, we need more research to really confirm a direct link,
Right.
but it's definitely a compelling observation. And this is where bioavailability becomes even more important, I think.
How so?
Well, remember how we were talking about potassium and how it plays this crucial role in like balancing out the effects of sodium in the body?
Yeah. And Celtic salt is a good source of potassium.
Right. So if that potassium in Celtic salt is more bioavailable, meaning our bodies can actually absorb and use it better,
Mm-hmm.
it could potentially have a much bigger impact on regulating our blood pressure.
So it's not just about how much potassium is in there.
Right.
It's about how well our bodies can actually use it.
Exactly. You got it. And this brings up another important point. When we talk about salt and health, we tend to focus a lot on sodium.
And how it can raise blood pressure.
Exactly. But we have to remember that not all salt is created equal.
Right. Celtic salt has those other minerals that might actually help with blood pressure.
Exactly. It's about looking at the whole picture, the entire mineral profile, and not just focusing on the sodium content. And that's where Celtic salt is really interesting. It's not just about cutting back on sodium. It's about replenishing those essential minerals our bodies need to work, right?
It's like a whole different way of thinking about salt.
Yeah, totally.
This is really making me rethink my salt choices. I've always been pretty mindful of my sodium intake, but I never really stopped to think about those other minerals.
It's easy to overlook. We tend to villainize salt, but it's a lot more nuanced than that.
And that brings us to another interesting aspect of Celtic salt, its potential role in detoxification.
Ah, yes. Detoxification. That's a word you hear everywhere these days.
Yeah, so what does it really mean, especially when we're talking about Celtic salt?
So when we say detoxification, we're really talking about the body's natural processes for getting rid of waste and toxins. Our bodies are doing this all the time.
Right.
And there are a lot of different organs and systems involved, like the liver, the kidneys, our digestive tract.
So how does Celtic salt supposedly help with that?
The idea is that Celtic salt, with its trace minerals and its potential to improve hydration, might be able to support those natural detoxification processes.
Okay.
So remember we talked about how those minerals, especially magnesium and potassium, they're involved in a bunch of different enzymatic processes in the body.
You said magnesium was involved in over 300.
I know, right? It's a busy mineral.
It's doing a lot.
It really is. And some of those processes are actually directly related to how the body detoxes itself.
Okay.
So having enough of those minerals can really help those systems run smoothly.
And what about hydration? How does that tie into detoxification?
Well, hydration is essential for detoxification.
Hmm.
It helps flush out those waste products and keeps those detox pathways working properly.
So by improving hydration, like Celtic salt is supposed to do, it could be indirectly helping our bodies get rid of waste more effectively.
Exactly. It's all connected. And this is one of the reasons why some people think that Celtic salt can actually contribute to a feeling of overall well-being.
Yep.
They argue that by supporting hydration and detoxification, Celtic salt helps the body function better, which can lead to things like more energy, better digestion, even clearer skin.
It sounds like there's a lot to be said for making Celtic salt part of a healthy lifestyle. But of course, as with anything, we have to look at these claims with a critical eye.
Absolutely. We've talked about the potential benefits and some of the science that's out there, but there's definitely still more research that needs to be done. It's important to stay informed, do your own research, and make the choices that are right for you and your health needs.
It's all about making informed decisions.
For sure.
So speaking of decisions, let's get practical. How do we actually use this stuff? Is it just for, like, fancy meals?
Well, Celtic salt is definitely versatile enough to use in any dish where you'd normally use regular salt, but it does have that unique flavor and texture, which might make you rethink your salt strategy a little bit.
All right, so let's say I'm ready to give this Celtic salt a try. How do I actually use it? Like, is it just for sprinkling on, fancy meals?
Well, you can definitely use it for that. Celtic salt is super versatile.
Okay.
You can basically use it in any dish where you'd normally use regular salt.
Okay.
But it does have this kind of unique flavor and texture that might make you change up your salt game a little bit.
Okay, so what are we talking about here? Flavor, texture, like, how is it actually different from the refined salt that I'm used to?
Well, it's a little bit moist, almost flaky,
Okay.
and that's because of all those minerals. And it's also not quite as intensely salty as refined salt.
Okay.
So the flavor is more, subtle. It's got this kind of sweetness to it. And a hint of, well, minerality, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Some people even say it tastes a little bit like the ocean, which makes sense considering where it comes from.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's making me think of those like fancy salts you see at restaurants,
Yeah.
sprinkled on top of dishes as a finishing touch.
Exactly. It's perfect for that. That delicate texture and that subtle flavor, it really comes through when you just sprinkle it on top of a dish right before serving.
Okay.
So think roasted vegetables, grilled fish, or even just a simple salad.
Oh, man. I bet it would be good on a caprese salad with
Mhm.
those fresh tomatoes and mozzarella.
Oh, totally. It would be perfect with that. And because it's a bit moister than regular salt, you actually don't need to use as much to get the same saltiness.
Okay.
So start with a small pinch and just see how you like it.
Yeah, better to start small and add more, right?
Exactly. So now let's talk about shopping for this stuff.
Okay.
Because I've seen a lot of different brands and varieties at the store. Is there anything in particular I should be looking for?
Yeah, definitely. Quality can really vary. So first and foremost, make sure it's unrefined. That means it hasn't been stripped of all those good minerals and it doesn't have any additives.
So basically the ingredients should just say Celtic sea salt, and that's it.
Yep, that's all you want to see.
Yeah.
And pay attention to where it's from, too.
Okay.
True Celtic sea salt only comes from Brittany, France.
Okay.
If it's from somewhere else, it's not the real deal.
I never knew that, so I got to be careful about what I'm buying.
Mm-hmm. And the packaging matters, too.
Okay, how so?
Look for Celtic salt that comes in an airtight container.
Ideally, glass or ceramic.
Ah.
That'll help keep it from drying out and keep those minerals in good shape.
We want to keep all those minerals around.
Exactly. Now, for those of you who are ready to ditch the regular table salt and make the switch, I recommend taking it slow.
Yeah.
You don't have to go all in right away. Just start using Celtic salt in a few dishes every week and see how you like it.
Like, ease into it.
Yeah, exactly. Give your taste buds and your cooking some time to adjust. And remember, because it is a little moister than refined salt, you probably won't need to use as much.
Got it. Start slow, adjust to taste,
Yep.
and enjoy all those extra minerals.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment with it.
Okay.
Try it in different dishes, play around with that unique texture, see what you can come up with. Have fun with it.
Yeah, like maybe I'll try making some salted caramels with Celtic salt.
Ooh, that sounds delicious. I bet those trace minerals would add a really nice depth of flavor.
Wow, this has been so interesting. We went from like those clay ponds in France all the way to how our bodies use minerals. I never thought that something as simple as salt could have such a big impact on, our health and how we feel.
Yeah, it really shows that it pays to stay curious, keep learning new things, and always be open to finding those little ways to improve our well-being.
I couldn't agree more. We've learned so much about Celtic salt today, but I think the exploration is just beginning, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Keep diving deeper, everyone, and until next time, happy salting.